I remember the first time I heard the silence scream. It was not the absence of sound, not the void hush that follows a broken Vox grill or a dead engine, but something heavier, a pressure that settled behind the eyes and refused to leave. Worlds forgotten by the Imperium do not vanish cleanly. They linger, they echo, somewhere beyond the Astronomican's wan glow, beyond the careful ledgers of the Administratum, and the prayers etched into data slates. There are planets whose names have eroded from memory, their tithes unpaid not because of rebellion, but because no one remembers they exist. The Imperium calls this loss an accounting error. The Void calls it something else. When a world slips the Emperor's sight, when no astropath sings its coordinates and no patrol cuts its void lanes, something patient begins to lean closer, and it is always listening. If you are listening now, if this silence has already brushed your thoughts, then stay with me. Share this transmission. Bind yourself to it with a like, a subscription. A small act of attention that keeps signals alive in a galaxy that devours them. The Imperium survives on ritual, and so do we. Every echoed word is a candle lit against the dark, and even a candle has weight when the void presses in. I was attached to the 117th Expeditionary Cartographica, a dull name for a dangerous duty. We followed rumors, broken references in ancient Munitorum rolls, half-corrupted astropathic echoes that spoke of resource worlds that had gone quiet without ever being declared lost. No rebellion markers, no exterminatus seals, just absence. Our vessel, the Pilgrim of Ash. Translated from the warp with the usual bone-deep nausea, the taste of copper and incense filling my mouth as the Geller field steadied. On the main hololithic, a planet rotated in ghostly blue, tagged with an archaic designation that none of us recognized. The cogitator insisted it was once compliant. The silence insisted otherwise. As we made orbit, the Auspex readings refused to behave. Cities appeared as pale scars on the surface. Manufactorum complexes sprawling like dead hives, their power signatures cold. There were no defense platforms, no void traffic, no response to our hails. The Astra Militarum detachment aboard began their litanies, the sound of 100 whispered prayers vibrating through the deck plating. I felt the vibration through my boots, through my bones, and wondered how long it had been since anyone on that world had prayed at all. Faith, after all, is also a signal, and silence is what follows when no one answers. We made planetfall near what the charts claimed was a primary manufactorum hub. The lander's ramp dropped to reveal a city petrified in decay, its towers leaning like penitents frozen mid-bow. Promethium stains streaked the ferrocrete old and dark, carrying a faint chemical bitterness that clung to the air. Wind sighed through broken arches, setting loose scraps of parchment and purity seals that fluttered and tore. There were no bodies. That was the first wrong thing. A city does not empty itself politely. It resists. It leaves marks. Here, even the servitors were gone. Their anchor ports ripped open as if they had stood up and walked away. We advanced in formation, laser guns steady, boots crunching on glass and rust. Every step carried the echo of footsteps that were not ours. A delayed mimicry that made my skin crawl. Inside the manufactorum, the vast assembly halls were silent cathedrals, their machine altars dark. I ran my hand along a conveyor rail, the metal cold enough to bite. The smell was wrong, too clean, stripped of oil and ozone, as if something had scoured the place of life. On a workbench, a data slate lay cracked, its last entry looping a single line of Benaric prayer that ended mid-syllable. Whatever took this world did not interrupt labor. It waited until labor ceased to matter. The Skitarii escort broke ranks first. Their augmetics whirred and clicked, internal sensors registering stimuli they would not translate for us. One of them raised a mechadendrite and traced a sigil of warning in the air. The motion sharp and almost fearful. The Magos Dominus with us intoned a scrap code chant, his voice buzzing through a vox emitter that struggled to mask unease. He spoke of data ghosts, of lingering machine spirits traumatized by abandonment. But even as he spoke, the Auspex screamed once, a single piercing note, and then went dead. Silence returned, thicker than before. We found the first sign of resistance in the lower hab blocks. Not bodies, but barricades. Improvised from furniture and shrine statuary. Their surfaces scored by weapons fire. The walls were etched with prayers, some to the Emperor, some to things I did not recognize, names scratched over and over until the stone had crumbled. I could not read them without feeling watched. The custodian guard are said to feel the Emperor's will as heat on their skin. I felt only cold. A trooper near me vomited, the sound obscenely loud in the quiet, and no one mocked him. We were all listening for something that had not yet decided to speak. At the heart of the city, beneath a plaza crowned by a broken imperial aquila, we found the shrine. Its doors hung open, hinges fused as if by intense heat. Inside, the air tasted of old incense and something sweeter, almost rotten. Candles had burned down to nothing. Wax pooled and hardened like pale scars across the floor. The altar was empty. Not looted, not shattered. Empty, as if the relics it once held had been lifted with reverence. Behind it, carved into the wall, was a mural depicting the Emperor upon the golden throne, his light streaming outward to touch the stars. But the stars had been scratched away, leaving only darkness around him. The lines jagged and desperate. The Magos whispered a theory, framed carefully as speculation, as rumor filtered through the cult mechanicus. He spoke of worlds that drift beyond the astronomican's reach, not in distance but in resonance, of faith that thins until it can no longer carry the Emperor's light, leaving a vacuum that something else is eager to fill. He did not name that something. No one did. Names give shape, and shape invites attention. We had enough of that already. It was night when the city finally spoke. Not with sound, but with motion. Shadows shifted where no light fell, pooling and stretching across walls in ways that defied geometry. The air grew heavy, pressing down on my chest until each breath felt borrowed. Vox beads crackled with fragments of speech that were not in any known tongue, layered over familiar voices from our own ranks, pleading, laughing, calling names. The Astra Militarum held their line, knuckles white around triggers, training warring with terror. I thought of Terra then, of the Golden Throne's endless vigil, and wondered if this was what it meant to be unseen. We never saw the enemy clearly. There were shapes, impressions, the sense of mass moving just beyond perception. Last fire cut through the dark, beams vanishing as if swallowed. Where they struck, the shadows recoiled, not in pain but in irritation. One trooper was lifted from the ground without a sound. His scream cut short as he vanished into nothing. There was no blood, no mess, just absence where a man had been. The silence laughed then. A vibration felt more than heard, and something inside me broke. Retreat was called, the order barely audible over the rising hum that filled the city. We ran, boots slipping on slick stone that had not been slick before. The path back to the lander twisting impossibly. Streets looped and folded, familiar landmarks reappearing with subtle changes. The aquila missing a wing, a statue's face turned away. Time stretched. My chronometer spun uselessly. I prayed not with words but with the raw act of wanting to exist. Somewhere a bell tolled, deep and slow, each peal stealing a little more warmth from the air. We made orbit with half our number gone. The Pilgrim of Ash shuddered as if in relief, its engine screaming as we burned for the warp. Only then did the silence loosen its grip, receding but not gone. In the Medicae bay, survivors stared at nothing, lips moving in soundless recitation. The Magos locked himself in communion, flooding the ship's noosphere with purifying code. The captain filed his report with meticulous care. Every loss accounted for, every anomaly flagged.
He did not request reinforcements.
He requested quarantine. In the days that followed, I reviewed the data again and again, searching for patterns. The world had not been invaded in any conventional sense. There were no orc spores, no Necron tomb signatures, no Terranid biotraces. It was as if something had come to listen, and finding no song worth keeping, had taken the silence itself as tribute. I found references then, buried deep in pre-heresy archives to similar losses, always at the fringes, always unremarked. Worlds that faded not in fire but in forgetting. There are those within the Imperium who whisper that the Emperor's light cannot reach everywhere at once, that even the Golden Throne has limits. Such thoughts are dangerous, framed only as cautionary allegory in sanctioned texts. I do not claim them as truth. I only know what I felt on that dead world. The way the dark leaned in when no one was watching. Perhaps it was the warp unshaped by will. Perhaps it was something older. A predator of neglect. In the Imperium, neglect is a sin measured in billions of lives. We passed another system weeks later. Its primary world marked as agri-compliant. The auspex flickered just for a moment, and I thought I saw the same pale scars on its surface. I said nothing. So did everyone else. The Imperium endures by choosing which silences to hear. Patrols are thin. Resources finite. Not every lost world can be mourned, let alone reclaimed. Somewhere a scribe would notice the missing tithe in a century or two, and a footnote would be added to a ledger no one reads. I still dream of that shrine of the scratched-away stars and the empty altar. In my dreams, the Emperor's gaze is not fixed on Terra, but searching, straining toward the dark beyond his reach. I wake with the taste of copper in my mouth and the certainty that something heard me dreaming. Faith is a signal, yes, but so is despair. The void is full of ears. So when you hear of a world declared lost without explanation, when a chart is quietly amended and a name erased, remember that loss is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives as a hush, a pause between breaths, a silence that waits to see if anyone will notice. And if no one does, it waits a little longer, patient as eternity, until the galaxy forgets how to sing at all.